what's the framework that we use to talk about these issues? And then how have we applied that? Talk about equity goals, and try and just talk a little bit about what some of the things we've learned about impacts and barriers to adoption, and then some different strategies and approaches. So, first of all, digital inclusion. So as we talk about that, we're thinking about the goal of equity in access, literacy, and content. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then what a lot of dollars have been invested, a lot of discussion, a lot of concern over broadband deployment and adoption. And there's a lot of discussion about, so what is broadband? How fast is that? So for me to communicate at home, I may require one speed. If I'm an architect trying to send drawings to Malaysia, that may be a different speed. If I'm a hospital, that may be a different required speed. And so federally, there's a lot of discussion about what is the proper speed for that. But what we're going to talk about is broadband deployment, and we're going to focus today on adoption. So you've got the distribution of the infrastructure, and then that's followed by the prevalence and equity in use. And so, you know, what the Comcast, what the other folks, providers are concerned about, let's get that wire to your home, let's get that wireless to your home, but then let's make sure folks can use it. We'll talk more about that. And then, particularly in the federal government right now, with the National Broadband Plan and the stimulus grants, there was a lot of talk about connecting anchor institutions. So the question is, you know, who's got the sign of the anchor hanging out front of their store? And so I might think of an anchor institution slightly different than some others. So it's recognized that that is the community colleges, that is the libraries. There's some recognition that there's a broader set of folks that are the anchors in our community. So is that just government-funded institutions, or is it a larger set of institutions? And I would argue, and there's been some work that's federally as well to say, well, anchor institutions include the nonprofits that are key anchors to making our community work, to delivering services in our community. The other word that's used a lot in the broadband plan and stimulus grant is vulnerable populations. And again, who that is varies. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but what's most critical is for you guys to weigh in, because you know your community best, you know who's vulnerable and who's not, but then to translate that into policy. And then finally, as I use the term community technology, we think about the strategies, programs, and services to help reach that digital inclusion. And that's been predominantly focused on the adoption, but it's also historically been focused on things ranging from public radio, public television, public access television, community radio, into the computer age and community technology centers or telecenters, or small organizations that have computers don't necessarily think of themselves as community technology centers, but they have a mission they're providing, and they're reaching the kids that we need to reach. They may provide some technology, they're providing